Very good morning and good evening to everyone. Javier, if you can share in the chat a visual cue, hint to people who need to go into the translation room, what they should look for, an image of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that'll be good. I think I've seen you or somebody posting something.
Yeah.
And put it on the chat, then people can see. Claudia and Waiting, if you are able to come back into the main room, if you can, and say something about, if you need translation, this is what you need to do. Look at chat, that will be great.
Buenos días. Para las personas que necesitan traducción al español. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you.
¿Me pueden? Can you hear me now?
No, I think you're still in the translation room.
Oh, I already moved. How about me? Weird.
Can't hear you.
Now can you hear me? Dr. Lai, can you hear me? No. Hello? Cannot.
Oh, Actually, no, Claudia, you just stay there. Javier, you can do that for me in Spanish.
Buenos días a todos. Solamente para comentarles de que está ya habilitada la parte de interpretación al español. Ahí acabo de
Maybe share
compartir.
screen.
Let me share. Okay,
Yeah. That'll be more obvious.
Okay, 1 second. I'm trying to figure it out here. Okay. So I think I'm sharing right now.
Yes.
Now let me see. How do I go back to? Okay, 1 second. Let me see. Just trying to figure out how.
I think I muted you, so you should unmute yourself.
Okay, just trying to figure out here how to share it.
I think you
yeah.
open the file
Yeah.
first. You open the file on your
Okay, let me see that
screen. Yeah.
here. Okay. All right. So I was trying to share the.
Yeah.
Okay. Entonces, como les comentaba, está habilitado ya la parte de interpretación a los diferentes idiomas. Si van a este icono de acá, el circular que parece como un globo, ¿no? Al presionar ahí está la opción de español, inglés, parece que está chino también, pero entonces aquí seleccionan español y ya queda habilitado el cuarto donde Claudia va a estar realizando la traducción del programa, ¿ok?
If you can keep the image there. 那么如果有师兄弟们需要中文翻译的，你就看那个在那边按那个一个好像地球的，那个按那边就有的可以选择翻译去中文的，那么你们就可以听到那个中文翻译。好，谢谢。So we're good now, I think. Yeah, we don't have to share screen anymore, Javier.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I'm trying to figure out how to. Should I hit leave now? Stop share. There you go.
Stop
there
share.
you go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So we are going to start as usual with the opening recitations, which begins with the Aspiration and Action Bodhichitta recitation composed by founder Drikung Kagyu, Kyobaji Densungen. Then we will recite the Refuge composed by Lord Atisha. Then the Four Immeasurables, which is found from the Sutras and Tantras, words of the Buddha. So these four recitations that we'll do at the beginning, and they are all, in fact, even though the titles are different, but they are all about bodhicitta, really. Yeah. So now we will pause so that this can be translated. I think, Wei Ting, you are in the main room. Oh, no, you're in the Chinese. No, you're fine, you're fine. Sorry, it's my mistake. Yeah. I'm gonna ask Omar or Javier to be paying attention to people accidentally unmuting themselves. If y'all can mute them, just like right now, somebody has. Yeah, thank you. So today I'm going to do the recitations in Tibetan. So we're going to switch between the English and the Tibetan, but today I'm going to do the recitations in Tibetan. Dhala dhawa jebe dra nobar jebe geng tarbadan tamje gembe bardu jobra jeba dham jege zu jebe man angadang nyambe senjen tamje dewa dhang den dungya dandre nerdu lana me bhayan dhabra zobe janju rinpo je dobra jay dhala dhawa jebe dra nobar jebe geng dharba dhan tamje gembe barudu jobra jeba tham jege su jebe manang kadang nyampe senjen tamje dewa dhan de dungya dandre nerdu lana me payang dhabra zobe janju rinpo je dobra jay dhala dhawa jebe dra nobar jebe ge dharba dhan tamje gembe barudu jobra jeba tham jege su jebe ma nangkadang nyampe senjen tamje dewa dhan de dungya dandre nerdu lana me payang dhabra zobe janju rinpo je dobra jay de je de sama gegi bardu longa yesum ge wala ko mashi bardu longa yesum ge wala ko du dering ne sonde ne ma santa samgi bardu longa yesum ge wala ko sangye jodan sogje jonam la chanju bardu dane kyapsu je dage jinsu gebe sonang ki rola pencher sanje drupra shu sanje jodan sogye jonam la chanju bardu dane kyapsu je dage jinsu gebe sonang ki Drola pencher sanje drupra shu sanje jodan soge jonam la chanju bardu dani kyapsu je dagi jinsu gebe sonang ki Drola pencher sanje drupra shu manang kadang nyampe senjen tamje dewa dang dewe gindan dambra gyurji Dungya dang dungya ki gyudang dewa gyurji Dungya mepe dewa dhamme dewa gyurji Niring chadang nidang dewe dhangyang la nabra gyurji Manang kadang nyampe senchen tamje dewa dang dewe gindan dambra gyurji Dungya dang dungya ki gyudang dewa gyurji Dungya mepe dewa dhamme dewa gyurji Niring chadang Nidang trawe dhangyang la nabra gyurji manang kadang nyampe senchen tamje dewa dang tewe gundan dembra gyurji dungya dang dungya ki gyudang trawa gyurji dungya mepe dewa dang me trawa gyurji Niring chadang nidang trawe dhangyang la nabra gyurji Durji chan dili naro dhamma mi tapo padu jinten gung katen sunden sawe lame shab sachu lama yidam chokyong la sopa depso dagi chen che lo gyab drengi dome samlingen rabbe donsong yong la kyan zome gyawa durji chan pa jinten gung po shab la du tatu sangyo kyo le me jinji lo shi tu je chen nenge mumpe se ne kyan sem to de du do pra chen che lo hong jin yu jin de jang sang pen ma ge sa dong bo la ya san jo ge nga de mye pen ma ju ne she shu da ko do kan do ma bu ko ra ge ge je se da de ge jin ji la ji she su su gu ru pen ma se de ho me jo ge yin ge bo da ne do su san je gung jin o mo ni sen chu gung ngon su don se ba za we la me shab la so wa Rira Lenshin and then Kempades and Jeshin to make the Boy Drogon Namda Shin La Girwa Sho Kusun Yonzo Lamezo Namla Jinang Sansu Deshin Niki Jo Dalu Longjo Nangshi Yonshela Lamejo Ginga de Zo Jonso Wada Judging Shapada Jise Yiran Kushin Sowa Yenge Wajung Se Dagi Jisa Batam Jeso Be Janjun Om Guru Devada Ginira Namandala Bujakaya Zamjanamgi Sambadan Loye Jida Jidarva Chejun Tomo Tebaye Jogi Kolo Gorduzo. What I just recited is basically some prayers, invocation, supplication to the lineage masters. That's one part of what was recited. The second part of what I recited is offering mandala and requesting teachings from the Buddhists and Bodhisattvas. If the teachings are just, like what I'm saying, it's kind of useless. So together, we invoke Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for them to turn the wheel of Dharma. Then what I say, maybe there is some benefit because it's protected, hopefully, by the actual Dharma that the Buddhists and the objects of refuge have taught us. So the second part of the offering mandala does that, and also reminds everyone of the preciousness of the Dharma that we should not take for granted. So even though Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are compassionate, of course they are always teaching. But just because they're always teaching, we cannot take for granted that they're always teaching. We still, for our own development, we have to request, we have to ask, we have to appreciate. As I mentioned, because we are doing translations for this series, and so there is a period of pause whereby if it's not the language you understand, then you might feel like, oh, nothing is going on. Now, for some of you, you know both languages, so wonderful, you get to hear the teachings twice. For those of you who don't know all the languages involved, during the period of pause, as I suggested last time, don't be so busy with what we are always busy with. I know, because I do it myself, I thought, let's be efficient, let's check email, let's answer some, WhatsApp and this and that. But give yourself, this time, like make it a gift to yourself to not need to do all of that. So instead, during this time of pause, let your mind rest. If you're familiar with the breathing, watching of breath meditation, you can do that. If you're unfamiliar with that, if you are very comfortable chanting some mantras. You can let your mind rest by chanting some mantras. If you're familiar with metta, loving kindness meditation, radiate metta at that time, or this month of Sagadawa, if you want, you can recite Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swaha, Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swaha, which is the mantra related to Buddha Shakyamuni. All those are very good. And then I said, if all of that even seems kind of not very appealing, then go make some tea and enjoy the flavor of your tea and dedicate that enjoyment to all beings. Then it becomes virtuous. So in our first class on Tuesday, we have looked at the first three verses. In Khenpo Kunpel's commentary, he distills four important points from the first three verses, which I shared with you. And the four important points are, he says, paying homage to the right kind of objects of homage, in this case, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Right? Paying homage, making a commitment and sticking to it, right? Then a humble attitude and a joyful attitude. He says, these four things, forget about, pursuing the path to complete awakening. He says, even in the mundane things that we do, these are four things that is good to have. When we have these four things, even in the mundane things that we do, we can accomplish. Yeah, so take that to heart, these four things. Yeah. So now, verse 4 and 5. Let me read 4 and 5. So hard to find the ease and wealth whereby the aims of beings may be gained. If now I fail to turn it to my profit, how could such a chance be mine again? Just as on a dark night, black with clouds, the sudden lightning glares and all is clearly shown, likewise rarely, through the Buddha's power, virtuous thoughts rise, brief and transient, in this world. These two verses are highlighting how we should use this life, this body, as a basis for cultivating the Dharma, and how we should use this mind as well as a basis. So verse 4 is about body, verse 5 is about mind. Then of course body and mind ultimately has to be together. So 4 and 5 is talking about the precious opportunity that we have now should not be wasted away by being continuously dragged around by the distractions of confused existence. So the very first line of verse 4, it says, so hard to find the ease and wealth. So here is a reference to, I think many of you already know this, what's known as the 8 leisures or freedoms and the 10 endowments or wealth. So if you are here listening to this, attending this teaching, attending the series, then for sure, you have achieved the 8 freedoms and you have the 10 endowments. Absolutely, no question. But briefly, what are the 8 freedoms? So freedom from being born in the hell realms, freedom from being born in the hungry ghost realm, and freedom from being born in the animal realm. The first 3. On one level, it means like, literally we are not in those 3 realms, we're in the human realms. But less literally, but equally, I think, as important, we are not like seemingly having the body of a human being, but still mentally somehow stuck in the 3 lower realms. How? When we're completely consumed by anger, so angry, sometimes we say, I cannot even listen to the Dharma. That means, you know, carrying a human body, but mentally stuck in the hell realm. Likewise, you know, so like overpowered by desire, by need, by wanting, yeah, that you cannot let any dharma into your head. That's hungry ghost. Yeah? Then animal realm, so completely kind of under the power of like instincts, like we call animalistic instincts. So that means no ability to kind of like make clear decisions upon reasoning. That we can say is sort of the plight of the animal realm. But luckily, you know, again, if we're attending this, we know we're free from these. So these three freedoms we have. The next freedom is freedom from being born in the God realms. This one actually we have to be more careful, because more likely many of us are stuck in that one. Then of course, literally right now, you know, I'm assuming, you know, none of us are literally in the God realm, but still the fault of that God realm can be present even with this human body. Which is that the God realms basically is characterized by there's so much pleasure, temporary, unreliable pleasure, but because, you know, our sense of time is so narrow, we think, oh, everything is great, you know. Then we become oblivious, you know. We don't think this is samsara anymore. So then they say, like, the higher within the God realms, and there are also stages, right? The higher you proceed in the God realms, the more likely you will be fooled by the temporary happiness, pleasure, bliss of the God realms. So that can also become an impediment. But it says here, you know, if we are free from that impediment, then we can practice Dharma. Sometimes we think, you know, oh, you know, you know, my conditions is not so good, it's not so great, oh, I have this problem, I have that problem, you know. And then we even think, oh, you know, like back in the day, during Buddha Shakyamuni's time, and during Shantideva's time, during Milarepa's time, I can tell you, insofar as like material progress and material comforts, we are definitely in the God realm compared to Milarepa, compared to Shantideva, compared to Buddha Shakyamuni. Really, I think the regular house of that we live in, we call regular, probably fancier than Shakyamuni's palaces. So like, and we forget that, we forget that. We think, oh, not enough, not so good now. Oh, we take for granted. So we might be accidentally stuck in the God realm and not realize, and still say, oh, I cannot practice because of this reason. I cannot practice because of that reason. Just the other day, I was working with a small group that we have, translating the teachings of Jigten Sumgen. And in this particular teaching, there was a discussion about, finding a place to do a certain practice. And then so the instructions say, find a house that is not easily destroyed by winds, So then we were looking at that, and then, of course, we just like, what's the deal with this? Like, is this some metaphor for like, inner winds or anything like that, Then when we're talking to the Kempo said, this is the 12th century when this teaching was given. Quite literally, building structures can easily be blown away. So he's just nothing special there except saying, don't go do this practice in a place where the house might collapse if the wind is too strong. See, you and I never really have to think, oh, it's where I'm going. Instead, you and I, we look for a place to do practice. We're like, oh, I don't know, this wood floor, it's not so, maybe put some cushions, put some, oh, the temperature, oh my goodness, it's 67 degrees, 68 is better, We're like, whereas like in Kyoba Rinpoche's time, it says, find a house that wind will not simply blow it away. In there, there's also a section where he's talking about, so in this house, there should be an opening, a window in the eastern wall of the house. And then he says, then you hang the tanka on the western wall of the house. Then throughout the day, the light that will come in through that opening, through that window, will continue to illuminate the tanka on the wall. Again, at first, when we were just looking at the words, we were like, is there some sort of special thing going on? It's like, no, there's no electricity to turn on your light. So you maximize this practice by making sure your opening is on the east side, because, it's the northern hemisphere. Well, no matter what the hemisphere, I mean, the sun comes, and you have maximum, light to see the tanka. And then the other thing is like, it has a description about how you open this window, on the east side. Again, something we never think about is like, back in the 12th century, what's a window? It's a hole in the wall. There's no glass to install, much less, weatherproof glass. Yeah, so houses in the 12th century, 11th century in Tibet, to have windows, yes, light can come in, but cold comes in as well. Do you want to see versus am I going to freeze to death? Those were the conditions that the great masters of the past were dealing with. And then we now? So what is at greater danger for us now is to be having human bodies, but mentally stuck in the God realm. And not even understanding this. So be sure that you're free from the faults of the God realm. Then the next four freedoms is to be free from being born among barbarians. So here it basically means, born in a place, even though human body and everything, human existence, but in a place where the Dharma doesn't exist. So today, very few places like this, because especially the miracle of the internet makes it so that the Dharma is available. So, but nonetheless, we have to be free from that, and now we are free from that. So that's the fifth. Then the sixth is free from being born free from being like in a state where you somehow have this like deep, like mistaken belief about cause and effect. Like cause and effect doesn't matter, or that by doing negative things, it can give rise to happiness, and so on and so forth. Then also free from being born at a time where Buddhas have not appeared. So there are periods of time where human beings or beings live where Buddhas have not appeared, and or if they have appeared, the teachings have disappeared. But we are not, living in such a time, so we have that freedom as well. And then the final one is freedom from being in a state where either due to mental or physical obstacles, we are not able to understand what is being taught to us. So those are the 8 freedoms. Then the 10 endowments. 5, they say, pertain to kind of personal circumstance, and 5 are circumstances that we find ourselves in. These have some overlap. It overlaps in a way with the 8 freedoms. But the 10 endowments is basically highlighting, like what a wonderful circumstance we now have. And so these 8 freedoms and 10 endowments, basically, if you remember what they are, they can really help us put things into perspective. Right? Because in life, if we compare whatever situation that we are in with something that we think should be the object we compare with, that can lead to a lot of suffering. So, for example, if your reference point is having 99 Rolls Royces, then you're pretty miserable right now. I don't have 99 Rolls Royces. Oh, or like, I only have 10 video games and not 15. You know, oh, so, you know, poor me. But if you are able to keep these 8 freedoms, 10 endowments in sight, and when things don't go well, and when you're feeling a little down, when you're feeling a little off, then you say, wait, 10 freedoms, 8 freedoms, 10 endowments, I have all of that. So I have the most important conditions. So everything else, the problems, everything else that we have, it's not like you ignore them. I don't recommend that, but you put them into perspective. You say, yeah, you know, they're there, but the most important things, which is having the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments, I still have. So it cannot be that bad. Things can change for the better. So here, Shantideva says, you know, now that this has been gained, now that this human life with the ease and the wealth, the freedoms and the endowments have been gained, if I don't take this opportunity to basically improve, right, the heart, the mind, then, you know, when will this chance come again? So no time to waste. But this no time to waste, you know, should not get you in a frenzy. You know, practicing the Dharma in a frenzy will not help. This is to say, you know, keep your mind, you know, focused on, keep your heart focused on, like, what is most meaningful to do with this life, which in the context of Shantideva, he says, you know, practicing and actualizing Bodhichitta. The 5th verse says, you know, now, so in terms of body, it says, okay, now we have the freedoms and the endowments, this body, this life. But then the mind part, it says, you know, truly virtuous thoughts, they are so brief, they are so hard to come by, and they're so fragile that it's like, you know, in a dark night, suddenly there's a flash of lightning. And so the rarity of the flash of lightning and the briefness of the flash of lightning is the same equivalent of how brief and how rare virtuous thoughts would arise in us. And he says, and when they do arise, it's because Buddhas and Bodhisattvas blessings, power, meeting with, this is understood, he doesn't say explicitly, but it meets, their blessings meeting with our past, our virtuous causes, karmas. Then briefly, these thoughts virtuous thoughts arises. And he says, and so this is very fragile, this is very rare. But now the point is, but now that they have arisen, again, let's not waste them. Now, these virtuous states, these skillful states of mind, skillful attitudes, they are very good, they're very important. But he says, but they are fragile and they are brief. Then the next 4 verses, he will highlight the superiority of bodhicitta over the other types of virtuous states of mind and skillful states of mind. What he's doing here is not saying, the other virtues, the other skillful states are not good. What he's trying to do here is to say, bodhicitta, on the other hand, is a state of mind, is an attitude, it's a skillful, virtuous type of mind, that if you have that, then all the other virtues, all the other skillful states will quite naturally, spontaneously grow and become stronger and stronger. So he says, now let's take the opportunity that we have been given now, or we have earned now, take this opportunity to, above all else, give rise to bodhicitta, nurture bodhicitta, and let bodhicitta grow stronger and stronger and stronger. So 6 to 9, he praises how of all virtuous states of mind, of all skillful states of mind, there is none like bodhicitta. So I'm just going to read the verses here from 6 to 9, and so maybe in the interpretation room simultaneously you all can also read the corresponding verses. So it says, virtue thus is weak and always evil is of great and overwhelming strength, except for perfect bodhicitta. What other virtue is there that can lay it down low? For many eons, deeply pondering, the mighty sages saw its benefits, whereby unnumbered multitudes are brought with ease to supreme joy. those who wish to crush the many sorrows of existence, who wish to quell the pain of living beings, who wish to have experience of a myriad joys, should never turn away from bodhicitta. Should bodhicitta come to birth in those who suffer, chained in prisons of samsara, in that instant they are called the children of the blissful one, revered by all the world, by gods and humankind. So he says, our unskillful habits and the ripening of those sufferings, they can be so overwhelming. Then meanwhile, the skillful states of mind, the healthy states of mind of the various types, right? Good self-esteem, being generous, being patient. He says, those, as good as they are, they are so shaky, and they're so ephemeral, unreliable, can disappear very easily. It says, however, bodhicitta, it's the one that can ensure that all these other virtuous states can grow strong. So, bodhicitta then is what we should kind of focus our attention on. When we have this bodhicitta, so on verse 9 it says, even those who are chained in the prisons of samsara, they are suffering, but even just one moment where bodhicitta arises in them, right there and then they are called children of the Buddha. They are called now bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas, often in the text, they are called children of the Buddha. So in that moment, you become a child of the Buddhas, you become a bodhisattva, and you will be revered by all gods and humans, it says. There's one Jataka tale, one story about sort of in one of the previous lifetimes of Buddha Shakyamuni. Many eons ago, before Buddha Shakyamuni was Buddha Shakyamuni, it's said that he was born in the hell realm. And in this hell realm, it's basically like a very terrible labor camp. So they're being forced by the beings in this realm to work, to carry very heavy loads of like stones. And so then there is this other being in that same state. And it is said that when Buddha Shakyamuni saw how much this other being was suffering and could not carry the load and is being beaten by these demons in the hell realm, in that moment, in a very kind of completely selfless, compassionate and without any thought of self. He said out loud to the guards of hell and said, let me carry this person's load. And it is said that in that moment, the roots of bodhicitta arose in him, which is compassion. Later we will learn, like what are the elements involved in giving rise to bodhicitta. One element is that kind of selfless compassion. And we will see later that selfless compassion itself it isn't yet the entirety of what bodhicitta means, but an extremely indispensable element in bodhicitta is this selfless, genuine compassion. So in that moment, it says, that it was able to cause this past life of Buddha Shakyamuni, cause him to be reborn out of that realm of suffering. In that moment, he became a child of the Buddhas. So now let's pause and see if there's any questions or comments. You can ask, unmute yourself, or type in the chat. And if it's typed in the chat, I will ask someone to please read that for me, because I can't really see from where I am the chat window. If there's any clarifications needed or something to share. If not, moving on, the next verses, which is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, Bodhicitta is explained via some similes, some metaphors. So 10, Bodhicitta is compared to alchemy. Alchemy is that kind of ancient science or technique of transmuting, turning like ordinary metals like mercury into gold. So alchemy. 11 is comparing the bodhicitta to a jewel, a wish-fulfilling jewel. 12 compares bodhicitta to a tree, a fruit tree that keeps providing fruit. 13 bodhicitta is compared to like a very powerful and trustworthy bodyguard. 14 bodhicitta is compared to the great fire that purifies everything, that cleanses everything. So these are the 5 similes, 5 analogies. So together with the interpreters in the interpretation room, we will read these verses, starting from 10. For like the supreme substance of the alchemists, it takes our impure flesh and makes of it the body of a Buddha, jewel beyond all price, such is bodhicitta. Let us grasp it firmly. Since the boundless wisdom of the only guide of beings, perfectly examined and perceived, is priceless worth, those who wish to leave this state of wandering should hold well to this precious bodhicitta. All other virtues, like the plantain tree, produce their fruit, but then their force is spent. Alone, the marvelous tree of bodhicitta constantly bears fruit and grows unceasingly. As though they pass through perils guarded by a hero, even those weighed down with dreadful wickedness will instantly be freed through having bodhicitta. Why do those who fear their sins not have recourse to it? Just as by the fire that will destroy the world, great sins are surely and at once consumed by it, its benefits are thus unbounded, as the wise and loving Lord explained to Sudana. So the first verse 10, it says, this body right now, there's a lot of pointing out by the Buddha, what we obsess over, what we love so much, our body, and then the bodies of others, In many places, the Buddha points out, hey, look at, what it actually is. And then especially in chapter 8 of Bodhicharyavatara, Shantideva, and you'll go into the details. And when we get there, I'll talk more. But, generally it said, what we obsess over, this body, right? Which we think to be such a source of pleasure, and the basis of experiencing pleasure, there is a whole other side of it that we constantly ignore, which is that it is the source of pain and frustration as well. But here the point is, but this body, can turn into a Buddha body when bodhicitta has dawned. Then this body, instead of its limited, unsatisfactory, unreliable nature, can become the body of Buddhas, as in it will become meaningful. It will exist now for the benefit of others. So such is the power of bodhicitta. In a way, this is a hidden, meaning not obvious. It's a hidden teaching on deity yoga. In Vajrayana, when you practice deity yoga, you are creating, you're cultivating the body of a deity. Deity means Buddha. You're cultivating the body of a Buddha through Edam practice. So this is a hidden kind of teaching of Edam. So what is Edam practice? Edam practice is the embodiment of bodhicitta, the expression of bodhicitta in the form of a Buddha, in a Buddha form. Whether you cultivate, right, cultivate the identity of like Buddha Shakyamuni, or you cultivate Tara, or you cultivate Manjushri, or you cultivate the identity of Yamantaka or Vajakilaya, whether peaceful, wrathful, whether one face or four face, whether two arms or 20 arms, whether 2 legs or 4 legs, all of that is nothing but the embodiment of bodhicitta. So if you practice deity yoga, practice Edam practice with any other kind of understanding, and without understanding that is the embodiment of bodhicitta, then at best, your visualization practice is like some kind of like exercise in becoming more artistic at best. At worst, it turns into like sorcery and fanciful thinking, magic thinking. Verse 11, bodhicitta is like a priceless jewel. And the Buddhas, in their boundless wisdom, have thoroughly examined and then taught to us, how priceless this jewel of bodhicitta is. And therefore, now that we have the opportunity to possess bodhicitta, we should not, kind of put it aside and go chasing after other inferior jewels. Uh, 12 is saying all the other virtues, their power is like a plantain tree, like a banana tree. Whereas bodhicitta, its power is like a fruit tree that continues to bear fruit again and again and again and again. Those of you who don't know anything about banana trees can produce fruit only once. After that, it doesn't produce any more fruit. You have to cut it down. So in the garden stores in the US here, all the other virtues are marked as annuals. So after every winter, you have to replant it. It's an annual plant. Bodhicitta is the only perennial. Plant one time, it will continue to be there throughout winter. "13 says bodhicitta is like this very powerful and strong bodyguard. So here, this one is actually saying, if in case you think you are such a horrible person, such a wicked person, that you have all these terrible things that you don't even want to admit to yourself, much less, admit to anybody else, and you think, oh, no way, I can like be free from all these, terrible mind states, secrets, angers, desires, it says here, no. Bodhicitta will take care of you if you let it arise in you. Then no matter how bad a person you think you are, how incapable a person you think you are, how, all your, secret habits and secret desires that you don't want people to know, all of that, no worries. If you have bodhicitta, bodhicitta will protect you. Bodhicitta is like this great fire, just like the great fire that destroys this universe at the end of the at the end of this universe. Likewise, it says bodhicitta has this power of this fire that can destroy all our negative karma, all our afflictive emotions. This reference to the wise and loving Lord is referring to Maitreya. So it says here, Shantideva says, just as Maitreya explains to Sudana. So this is referring to the Avatamsaka or the Gandavriya Sutra. There is one extended teaching describing the spiritual evolution or spiritual growth or spiritual path of Sudana, Shantai Tongzi Sudana, how he went to these various 50 teachers to be instructed, to be taught, to be revealed the levels of realizations. And so one of his main teachers, kind of directing his study, was Maitreya. And so Shantideva is referring to that sutra, to that kind of the story of Sudana. Now together with the interpreters, we're going to read verse 15 and 16. Bodhicitta, the awakened mind, is known in brief to have two aspects. First, aspiring, bodhicitta in intention. Then, active bodhicitta, practical engagement. As corresponding to the wish to go, and then to setting out. The wise should understand respectively the difference that divides these two. So now Shantideva gives a formal definition of bodhicitta. What are we talking about when we say bodhicitta, bodhicitta, bodhicitta that we've been praising? Now he gives in a formal way, a clear kind of. So this is important for us to keep in mind, to not forget this explanation of what bodhicitta is. Because I think a lot of times, like the expression, the word bodhicitta is used often as another way of saying compassion. But really, bodhicitta is more than compassion. Yeah. So we begin now and paying attention to what Shantideva says. Yeah? He says, bodhicitta, there are two aspects. And so now we'll look at a more formal way of talking about what bodhicitta is. Now, before looking at verse 15 and 16 directly, let's first look at the word itself, bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is Sanskrit. It combines two words, bodhi and chitta, two words. Bodhi is to be awake. Chitta is mind. So from this very simple looking at the word itself, there are two parts, awaken and mind. Or you could also say, maybe this is just in English, so translation, don't worry too much about it if it doesn't apply to your language. But in English, you can also say awakening mind. Awaken mind, awakening mind. Yeah. So very nicely in English, it carries both senses of what bodhicitta means. Bodhicitta is the kind of mind, the kind of attitude that you need to have in order to become a Buddha. So awakening mind is the mindset, is the attitude that you need to have that will cause you to awaken. So it's the awakening mind. Then bodhicitta is also what you are when you are awake. So awakened mind. So it's both, it can mean both that which you need in order to awake, in order to be Buddha, and that which you have completely when you are Buddha. So bodhicitta, that word, has these two senses. So that which you need to have, that which you need to cultivate in order to be Buddha, that is called relative bodhicitta. That which you will have, that which you awaken to, that is called ultimate bodhicitta. Now, these are not two separate things. They are the same. But depending on where you are, depending on which perspective you are looking from, then we separate them into relative bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. Now, here, verse 15 and 16, here, when Shantideva says that bodhicitta has two aspects, bodhicitta in intention and active bodhicitta, or as we will say, aspiration bodhicitta and action bodhicitta, here, what he's talking about pertains to relative bodhicitta. It pertains to that which we have to cultivate, that which we have to train in. So the overt, the kind of like overt, explicit meaning of Bodhicharyavatara is actually on relative bodhicitta. But nonetheless, the hidden meaning of Bodhicharyavatara is ultimate bodhicitta. Because in the end, these two are inseparable. But as a matter of laying things out, the overt, obvious meaning of Bodhicharyavatara is relative bodhicitta. And so here, primarily Shantideva is talking about relative bodhicitta. But ultimate bodhicitta is not absent. If it is absent, then it cannot be bodhicitta. So in Gampopa, as a jewel ornament of liberation, quoting different sutras and different treatises, he lays this out clearly. He says there are two classifications to bodhicitta, the ultimate and the relative. And then he says, and so what is ultimate bodhicitta? And he gives a very succinct, very clear definition. He says, ultimate bodhicitta is all-pervading emptiness, that means emptiness without any kind of limits, endowed with the essence of compassion. Utterly clear and unchanging, unmoving. So this is what sometimes, like in Mahamudra, it's called the natural state. In other places, it's called Buddha nature. So then this ultimate bodhicitta is something to be realized. Then what is relative bodhicitta? Then Kampopa quotes a sutra that says, relative bodhicitta is the vow to liberate all sentient beings from suffering through compassion. In other words, relative bodhicitta is by the force of love and compassion. So even though it's in this quote, it just says compassion, but love and compassion, right? By the force, by the power, motivated by loving kindness and compassion for all sentient beings, seeing the suffering that all sentient beings are caught up in, and driven by that, motivated by that, we make this vow, we make this resolution, we make this determination to want to free all of them from this cycle of birth and death. That is relative bodhicitta. So from Buddha Shakyamuni's lifetime, as a hell being, right? And in that moment, giving rise to a moment out of that great compassion of wanting this person, this other person in that realm to be free from suffering. From that moment all the way to him being, practicing until he arrives at the first bodhisattva level, all the way up to his attainment of the 10th bodhisattva level, and then from the 10th bodhisattva ground onto the ground of Buddha, all of that is nothing but the cultivating of bodhicitta, so that it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until ultimate bodhicitta is completely and without any remainder thoroughly realized. Gampopa also explains in the jewel ornament, he says that until we reach the first Bodhisattva Bhumi, yeah, also called the path of seeing, then ultimate bodhicitta is not present in any meaningful way. In fact, he just says, there is no ultimate bodhicitta until you arrive at the first bhumi. Now, of course, footnote, right? He's not saying that ultimate bodhicitta doesn't exist before then. What he's saying is that it doesn't exist in any way that has any relevance to us. We don't, because as long as we don't see it, the ultimate bodhicitta is just a concept. So sometimes, because we have read too many Buddhist texts, especially the Mahamudra, Dzogchen, like, oh, everything is perfect. Everything is just Buddha already. Then we listen to that, then we get lazy, They say, oh, everything is just fine. Everything is just perfect, But here is good, Gampopa says, actually, no. Until you have attained the path of seeing the first Bodhisattva Bhumi, then all your talk about ultimate bodhicitta is just talk, okay? Now, if it is skillful talk to keep us inspired, that's good. But if it is like, self-deluding talk, then better not talk about ultimate bodhicitta. And so that's why Bodhicharyavatara, mostly, he only talks about relative bodhicitta, because all the aspects of relative bodhicitta we can cultivate. We can do something about it. And if we take care of that, then very naturally, we will arrive at the first bhumi, the path of seeing, and then, for the first time, an aspect of ultimate bodhicitta becomes directly seen. That's why it's called the path of seeing. For the first time we see this natural state. And then from there, there's still 10 bhumis to ascend, until complete ultimate bodhicitta is perceived, is realized. So maybe, so as not to distract us, Shantideva doesn't even use the vocabulary of ultimate bodhicitta. So here in verse 15, 16, he just says, as for bodhicitta, there are two aspects, the aspiration aspect and the action aspect. And so he was very practical, right? He's not going into all this speculation. I say all these other things are noble rumors. Sometimes I joke, I say, what the Buddha taught that we often call the Four Noble Truths, I said, if we're honest about it, right, we have to call them the Four Noble Rumors. Why? Because what is a rumor? Rumor is based on hearsay, right? So the first noble rumor, there is suffering. It's a rumor because only on some days when things go bad, then I say, oh yeah, there is suffering. Other times, no. I live my life as if, there's no such thing as suffering. Then suffering has a cause, right? It's just a rumor. But nonetheless, because Buddha spoke it, we call it noble rumor, because this rumor came from a reliable source, from the noble one. Then there are, like nonsense rumors, right? So likewise, ultimate bodhicitta is a rumor. So Shantideva says, I'm not going to distract people from that. I'm going to be very practical and show how relative that aspect of bodhicitta, that we can do something about it, that we can cultivate, that we can nurture, that we can grow. So not very fancy, but very practical. So aspiration bodhicitta, the wish to go. Action bodhicitta, setting out, getting on the journey. I'm looking at verse 16 now. So the broad division of this, of bodhicitta, now we can put aside ultimate bodhicitta, that noble rumor. Yeah. That aspect of bodhicitta, actually Shantideva, chapter 9, the wisdom aspect, he will kind of get around to ultimate bodhicitta. So we can put that aside. So from now on, bodhicitta is referring to what we would call relative bodhicitta, right? So here, insofar as bodhicitta is concerned, the general division you can say then is the resolve, the promise, the vow, the aspiration, and followed by the doing, the implementing. So the broad division of bodhicitta is into these two parts. Elsewhere, there's another way of dividing bodhicitta that says that aspiration bodhicitta is a commitment to the result, and action bodhicitta is a commitment to the cause. Just to introduce to you some of the finer details of how this topic has been taught and discussed and presented. It is said that Shantideva, in following Nagarjuna's tradition, and therefore tracing that to the Bodhisattva of wisdom, Manjushri, explains bodhicitta as action, aspiration bodhicitta as the resolve, right? The wish to go, and action bodhicitta as the actual going. So this is Shantideva, right? But you should also know there's another way of explaining, which is taught by, in Tibet, it was taught by Atisha. Then Atisha traces this back to Asanga, and Asanga to Maitreya, the Bodhisattva of love, loving kindness. There, in that tradition, they say that aspiration bodhicitta is a commitment to the result. So what that means is you are committed to achieving the result. You're committed to achieving the state of Buddha. Then action bodhicitta, they say, is a commitment to the causes. What are the causes of the state of Buddha? Practicing and perfecting the 6 paramitas and the 10,000, so to say, right? Meaning infinite number of virtues. Yeah, in the past, Buddhist scholars do debate, which is more right, which is a more perfect explanation. I think for us, no need to get into that, These are just complementary ways of giving us a deeper and deeper understanding and appreciation of what bodhicitta is. And that's sufficient. That's the attitude we should take. We're not here to debate who is right and who is wrong. So from Atisha's explanation, we need to appreciate the point that commitment is necessary throughout both parts. Commitment to achieving the state of Buddha and commitment to doing what it takes. Both are necessary. Commitment is so important. If we lose this commitment, then no matter how much we want something, if we only want something but we have no commitment to reaching that something, then useless. So Atisha's emphasis on how Aspiration Bodhichitta is commitment to the result, Action Bodhichitta is commitment to the cause. That emphasis reminds us of the importance of not letting our commitment kind of fall to the wayside. And Shantideva's explanation for me, what he reminds us of, what he is wanting us to not forget, is that it's good. It's good to have that desire, that wish to free all beings from confusion, from suffering. But that is not enough. You have to do it. You have to get on with the program, so to say. Because if you don't do that, merely wishing is not going to make things happen. But nonetheless, from verses 17 to 20, he will praise the qualities of the aspiration bodhicitta, wishing, and he says, like this wishing to free beings from samsara, wishing to achieve Buddha for the sake of all beings, this wish, it is so powerful, he says, that once this has arisen in you, even when you are sleeping, that sleep is a different quality of sleep from when you don't have this wish. That's how powerful it is. So 17 to verse 17 to 20, he will talk about the virtues of Aspiration Bodhichitta. Verses 21 to 26, he will talk about, summarize the virtues, the power of, 17 to 20, he will talk about the general virtues of both aspiration and action. Then 21 to 26, he specifically talks about the benefits of Aspiration Bodhichitta. And 27 to 30, he talks about the benefits of Action Bodhichitta. So this we will cover in our next session. So before I forget, the next class, we are going to meet on Monday instead of Tuesday. Because on Tuesday, right at the time that we are supposed to meet at around 9, I'm getting on a plane. So I won't be home for 2 weeks, but don't worry, I will bring my microphone, my camera, my computer. So I will continue to do this where I'm going. But just on Tuesday, I'm walking on a plane. It's kind of hard to hold the phone and to teach, you know. So instead on Tuesday, this next class, we will meet on Monday. Then next Saturday, same Saturday. So please do tell others, those who might not be here today. There's so many wonderful Dharma programs going on. And then now it's the month of Sagadawa, you know, then even more, you know, things that you can be doing. So please, you know, do whatever that you know would be most meaningful to you. And if there's a schedule conflict, this set of teachings are recorded. And we'll do our best to try to upload them to the YouTube channel, Drigong Dharmakirti YouTube channel. Omar is diligently updating that, so you can watch the classes that you miss over there. So I still want to leave like maybe a chance for anyone who might have any very urgent question about what we covered, even though we have passed the time that we say we're going to meet. But let's leave a few minutes for anyone who has any questions to ask. If you oh, good. I hear a question coming, maybe.
Dr. Lai,
Yes.
this is Sarah in Little Rock. And going back to verse 10, it's talking about the alchemist. And the last line says, such as Bodhicitta, let us grasp it firmly. That word grasp kind of threw me off at first. So I've been thinking about this while we've been teaching, because we think of grasp as negative. But does it in that sentence mean let us know it?
Yes, sure. No, it's okay to grasp. When a monkey is swinging across the forest, you know, if it does not grasp the vine firmly, you know, it's going to slip and fall, and there are lots of tigers down there, you know. Sometimes I think we Buddhists get stuck in words.
Right.
Yeah, so grasp is okay. There's skillful grasping and unskillful grasping. So more important is skillful or unskillful. So grasp is okay. But just like that monkey, you know, if the front hand is grasping firmly, right, as it swings, right, to the next vine, and the left hand now grasp the next vine firmly, if the right hand doesn't know when to release the last vine, then it would be like, it would be a stretching exercise rather than moving across the forest safely. So grasping is okay. Skillful grasping. So go ahead and translate.
Thank you.
¿Puedo preguntar algo, por favor? Ya, muy bien, gracias, doctor Lee, por todas sus enseñanzas. Lo seguimos en Cusco, llamo desde Cusco. Escuché bien claro al doctor Lee, no solo es el deseo de la bodhichitta, o sea, la bodhichitta de aspiración, solo deseo, sino también la bodhichitta de acción, ¿no es cierto? La bodhichitta de acción. Pero el doctor Lee también dijo, hasta en los sueños puede pasar. ¿Cómo podríamos practicar, por favor, esa bodhichitta de aspiración, solo deseo, esa bodhichitta de acción, que son los hechos? Pero el doctor Lee dijo, hasta en los sueños podríamos practicar o tratar de llevar a esa bodhichitta de acción. Por favor, hasta en los sueños. ¿Cómo sería, por favor? Gracias.
Dr. Lee, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Flor from Cusco says thank you for teachings, and also she would like to understand or ask you about this. We have this aspiration bodhicitta, and also we have action bodhicitta, and you mentioned something about the dreams. Even in the dreams, how can you? So her question is, how can you practice this bodhicitta of action during dreams?
Yeah, good. So here, Shantideva isn't talking about dreams. Shantideva is just saying, he says, even Aspiration Bodhichitta, and even without yet putting into action. But the point is that bodhicitta is so powerful, right, that even just like desiring it, desiring to be a Buddha for the benefit of all beings, he says, once you have that, even when you're asleep, he didn't say dreams actually, to clarify. He says, even when you're asleep, it's beneficial. How? Because now, right, now that you have bodhicitta, when you're going to sleep, it's no longer, or at least ideally, it's no longer, oh, I like to sleep. But rather you're going now to sleep so that you can wake up fresh and able to continue to implement bodhicitta. So his using of sleep as an example is to emphasize that even something as, because normally in other contexts, the Buddha will say, sleep less, please, because you're wasting time. So minimize your sleep and maximize, right, your waking hour to benefit others. But here Shantideva using that example of sleep. So here, no, it's not talking about, in your sleep, in your dreams, you can use your dream body to go help beings and all of that. That's not what's alluded to here. Yeah. So which perhaps is what Flor is wondering about. Yes, there are teachings about dream yoga, sleep yoga. That is for a different. Here, Shantideva is using sleep because to contrast how without bodhicitta, your sleep is all just about, furthering your confusion. But with bodhicitta, your sleep, even sleep, can something that is beneficial.
Dr. Lai.
Let's hold on, Gary, so that the interpreters get a chance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, hi, but let's hold on, yeah.
Perfecto, perfecto. Sí, entendí, muy bien. Entonces ahora, con tener la bodhicitta de aspiración ya hacemos mucho. Está bien, gracias. Gracias, doctor.
Okay, Gary, go ahead, unmute yourself. We're ready for your question. And if the interpreters can try to translate Gary simultaneously, then we can save some time, the question. Go ahead, Gary.
It's short. I just wanted to know if there is a commentary on the Bodhicharyavatara that you would recommend.
Yes, I think previous weeks I might have mentioned the one by Kunzang Pelden called The Nectar of Manjushri's Speech.
Okay.
The Nectar of Manjushri's Speech. I think last class I mentioned this.
You did.
It's been translated into English. And so that one is a really good one, but it's traditional. So if you don't know what to do with it, then it's a little hard to unpack, you know.
Okay. Is there one a little bit easier to deal with? That's still good.
Oh, there are many, like Pema Chodron, you know, has a very popular commentary or teachings on called No Time to Lose. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has one commentary, but not every single verse. This is based on oral teachings he gave. Then most recently, Karma Kagyu Western Kempo, the main translator for the Karmapa, Kempo Karma Chopel, David Karma Chopel, just published a new translation and a kind of a guide, you know, not so much a commentary, but he summarizes every chapter. Shambhala just published that book. So that's so there are quite a few.
What was his name again, please?
Kempo Karma Chopel. If you look at the Shambhala website, you'll see the latest Bodhicharyavatara that they translated. Tranguru Rinpoche has a commentary that is also published, I believe, on Bodhicharyavatara. Then on Kenjen Koncho Gyaltsen's YouTube channel, there are also recordings of Bodhicharyavatara teachings that he has given in the recent past. Yeah.
Wow, thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sure.
you very much.
Then I just noticed somebody sent me a message and said that somebody asked a question on Facebook. I'm sorry to all of you on Facebook if you have been asking questions. Even though we are live casting on Facebook, we don't have someone there reporting questions or comments. But I did get a message from someone saying that someone asked a question about regarding the first Bodhisattva Bhumi or the path of seeing that I said that it's only when you have arrived on the first Bhumi, the first Bodhisattva level, or also called the path of seeing, that you catch a glimpse of this ultimate bodhicitta. So from there, there was a question, how do you get there? How do you get to the first Bhumi? How do you get to the path of seeing? Well, basically by practicing what we're talking about here. Unfortunately, this first Bodhisattva Bhumi or the path of seeing is not like, you know, arriving at some address and getting to the bottom of the elevator and then pressing, you know, level 1, and then the door opens and then you press 1 and then you get to 1. It's you basically work on clearing your afflictive emotions. So this is the month of Sagadawa. It's called one of those miracle months where merit is multiplied infinitely. This year is from May 12th to June 10th. So keep that in mind. This is an auspicious month. Now, of course, there's a lot of activities you can do to kind of further add to your diligence this month. But I want to say, you know, like it's a good month to remember the example of Buddha Shakyamuni. To remember the example of Buddha Shakyamuni. To that degree, we venerate Buddha Shakyamuni. We venerate Buddha Shakyamuni so that we can become like Buddha Shakyamuni. So fundamentally, even all the pujas that we do, even if we do Shakyamuni Buddha puja, like venerating Buddha Shakyamuni, remember that Buddhism is not a theistic religion. It's not a God-based religion. We do not venerate Buddha Shakyamuni and wait for Buddha Shakyamuni to solve our problems. We venerate Buddha Shakyamuni so that that veneration can inspire and can energize us to become like Buddha Shakyamuni. So in Chinese, you know, we say there's bai for and there is xue for. Bai for is not very useful if the effect of that doesn't inspire us to xue for, to become like Buddha. Venerating Buddha, of course there is benefit, you know, but the real benefit of venerating the Buddha is so that the power that comes from venerating the Buddha can be turned into the energy that we need to become like Buddha. Buddha doesn't need anyone to make offerings and to pray to him. We have to be clear about this. So even when we chant, you know, this month especially, if you're inspired to do Om Muni Muni Mahamunaya Swaha, Om Muni Muni Mahamunaya Swaha, Buddha Shakyamuni's mantra, again, don't do this like, you know, thinking that somehow mysteriously, magically, things are going to change. But do this, you know, with the understanding and the motivation, like, this is a method, this is a means for me to try to experience, you know, how the Buddha saw the world, how the Buddha saw what is the cause of suffering, how the Buddha saw how suffering can end. So do this mantra with that understanding, with that motivation. It's not Om Muni Muni Mahamune Swaha. Then Buddha Shakyamuni comes and does your laundry for you, your mental laundry. Now, it doesn't happen like this. But that we do this mantra, understanding that this is a method, a key to helping us to experience what the Buddha experienced. So with this, we will do a simple dedication, simple but profound and powerful if you understand what you're doing, which is the dedication, the Bodhichitta dedication that I mentioned. So the lines, it says, excellent and precious Bodhichitta, where it has not arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. And remember how this short 4-line dedication is basically encapsulates the entire 10 chapters of Bodhicharyavatara. Chanju sem chorim boje ma ge banam ge gyurje ge ba nyam ba me ba yang kone gong du be thank you to Claudia and Claudia in Chile and waiting in Malaysia for interpreting, and other people are also going to be involved in the interpretation of these teachings into Spanish and Chinese. And then thank you to all of you who give up your precious time to entertain me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thanks, everybody.
Gracias.
Gracias a todos.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Gracias, Claudia.
Dr. Lee. Gracias, gracias.
Goodbye.
Gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Lai, and everyone.